The Bazaar is an illicit radio program. Listener discretion is advised.
Welcome. Got a selection of good things on sale, stranger.
Hello there and welcome back to the show. This is The Bazaar and I'm your host Richard, and this is episode 9. I have with me tonight a writer-director from White Plains, New York, and we discuss his new feature debut, Romeo's Distress. But first, before we get to that, just a little bit of housekeeping. This is the last episode in March, and I don't know, is anyone seeing on Twitter this tripod initiative going around where people should recommend a podcast and what we're listening to. At the minute, I was listening to the Monster Guys after they were on last week, and I recently made a little cheesy cameo on their Fairy Tales podcast. You should hunt that one out. It's How Thomas Connolly Met the Banshee. I really hammed that one up if you want to hear me somewhere else and hear some really good tales on over there. And as always, I have to give my shout out to the boys, Terrible Terror podcast, Preachcast, and No Sequel for You podcast. They're great ones too if you like film and entertainment. Really funny. But first, I want to play a little clip from the trailer for Romeo's Distress, just to give you a taste of things to come. And we're going to launch straight in after that to my chat with Jeff Frumess. Enjoy.
Uncle Elmo, have you ever been in love?
Well, there you go on the love thing again. You're always speaking of it. It seems to be the reason behind the actions you've taken.
I even try to forget about her, but I just can't.
What is more important than love?
Nothing.
That's right.
Nothing is more important than love.
That's right. You must just seize the day. Carpe diem.
Carpe diem.
No, scream it. Carpe diem!
I think it's time that we acted.
Like what we talked about.
Family. Can you really put a price on something like that? On your family's security?
I know you're up to something, huh?
How hard can we really go on them, you know?
As hard as we want.
You can do whatever you want to me, but it will never change the fact how much I care about your daughter.
Hello, Jeff. How are you this evening?
Oh, I'm doing well. How are you, Richard?
I'm good. Now, you're calling all the way from New York City, is that correct?
Yeah, something like more like White Plains, New York, but yeah, pretty much. I mean, when you're this far away, it's all the same. So New York City.
And you're having a bit of a really White Plains up there. There's a bit of a blizzard, you were telling me.
Oh yeah, this is a blizzard of Shining-esque proportions.
Right, you're not in the Overlook Hotel or anything like that up there?
Oh no, and I'm definitely not going to go crazy with an axe either. So
yeah, that's
I'm
good.
Instead, going to stay inside and record podcasts with you.
Of course. So Jeff, for those in the audience who might know who you are, do you want to give a little bit of background of what you do, who you are, and how it all came to be?
Well, I am a filmmaker, and I'm from here. I'm from Westchester, New York, right up top New York City, and yeah, I went to film school originally. You know what happened? I was 18. I didn't know what I wanted to do, and then I watched that Clerks. Remember when Clerks came out with that 10th anniversary?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, I watched that Snowball effect documentary, and it just it was like lightning struck, and I just knew I was like, I want to tell stories. I want to, make movies somehow. Because up to that point, I didn't really know what I wanted to do in my life. And I've literally been trying to do that since then. It was, 12 years ago. And I went to film school after that. And when I got out, I had a few false starts. And then in about 2014, I really started focusing on trying to tell my first narrative story. Tried to make my first feature-length film. and that was Romeo's Distress.
Yeah, and I see that there was a few short film attempts, but Romeo's Distress, which will kind of be the focus of today, but that was your big feature debut, so to speak.
Yeah, I have a few other projects that are feature length that are just not finished yet. But Romeo is the first, narrative feature length film. The other things are documentary. Yeah, I've done a bunch of shorts, but the thing about doing shorts is it's I love making shorts. Don't get me wrong, but if I'm going to, I realized one day, I was like, wait a minute, what if I apply the same philosophy of making a short to making a feature length film? I'll just I'll block out a day, get together with the cast and crew, and shoot the whole day, shoot a bunch of different scenes, and it's like I shot a short film. It's like, just do that eight or nine times, and you got a feature length film, right? So that was my initial logic when I started.
Now, yes, and you're kind of toting Romeo's Distress as a weird, quirky, genre-bending piece of no-budget filmmaking. How does one go about making a no-budget feature film?
Oh man, I think it's easier to make a no-budget film than it is to make a film with I don't know, maybe a lot of filmmakers would tell me otherwise. But yeah, I don't really know. Romeo is not like a straight horror film. It is definitely it's like a mix of a lot of different stuff. But when you're learning about marketing, it's like, what's your niche audience? And primarily it's people that are into offbeat, weird, maybe even underground cinema, but also horror fans, or more accurately, at least that for myself, I consider myself a genre film fan. It doesn't necessarily have to fall strictly in these like boundaries of horror, but I find myself, really trying to access that audience more than any other audience, because it's like a solid audience to access.
Of course, yeah. And for those who might be interested in watching Romeo's Distress, it's a Shakespearean Gothic horror thriller, but there isn't actually any character called Romeo in the actual film. So could you explain why you went with the name Romeo's Distress?
Well, way before, right after I got out of film school, I was just writing a lot. And this was about 2010. And it was before I started work on a feature-length documentary that I've completely circled back around to now, about the band The Misfits. And I have somewhere in my notes is this idea for Romeo's Distress, which starring a character also named James, but completely very, very different. And Romeo's Distress is the name of a Christian death song that to me is like the best post-punk, death rock, gothic song out there. I just love it. It just seemed like it really fit the story. And music, I'm always very inspired by music when I'm writing. So, just about everything I've ever written has a title of a song. And so this one was Romeo's Distress.
And like Cheesecake of Love, the signature song of the character James.
That is actually, so I also work in a restaurant, and I had one of my, hold on, how do I turn off? That was Facebook. So sorry about that.
That's okay. So like these little jingles in the background. It was inspiring.
Yeah, exactly. It was like a light bulb that just went off just now. No, that's funny actually. So Cheesecake of Love is a song that I wrote myself, and I work in a restaurant. That's the straight job to fund the dream, right? And a table had ordered a cheesecake, and the guy who was behind the line who was preparing the cheesecake used some raspberry sauce to draw a heart around the cheesecake. And I was really into this band called King Kong and the Barbecue Show, and all their songs are just like ooh, 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 like just like doo-woppy whatever. And it just hit me. I was like, Cheesecake of Love, and I just started. I started singing the song. I just made up the song. The song was born. I started singing it, and then everybody else started singing it. And then before you know, everybody in the kitchen's singing it. And then when I was making the film, it's just about, it's part of that, write what / like what inspires you, or, you know, take pieces of you and put it into your art, I was like, you know, all my favorite cult films are coincidentally musicals. Rock and Rule, The Forbidden Zone, Meet the Feebles. I think Meet the Feebles has Garden of Love, which maybe I subconsciously nicked Cheesecake of Love from. I don't know. And trying to think what else. Just lots of movies have musical numbers in them that I love. Meet the Hollowheads. And so I don't know. I was like, this movie needs a musical number, so why not Cheesecake of Love? And I don't know where the ukulele came from. We just, I think that Anthony had a ukulele, and so we did that in Sleepy Hollow Cemetery, Cheesecake of Love.
Yeah. Do you ever think you're going to jump ship and just take up jingle writing and not direct anymore?
Well, okay, so Nick, what you're hearing in the movie and through his headphones is he's playing on the ukulele, but right before that we had done a rehearsal that you can actually see on YouTube, and it's me and Anthony and Nick, who was the only other cast member. It was real crew member. It was really just Nick and I who shot the film. Nick did the sound. He also has done the sound for a zombie film called The Battery. I don't know if you're familiar with that one.
No, I haven't.
Oh, you should watch it. It's incredible. That movie, like, that's what really influenced me to make Romeo more than anything, in a way, because up to that point I had been, you know, languishing, trying to, you know, put projects together, and everything, you know, everything I put together just kept falling apart. And then I had heard about this movie called The Battery, and how these guys they put $6,000 together and they shot what was apparently an incredible zombie film. And right around that time, I was sending out Craigslist ads, you know, looking for crew members. And this guy, Nick, like, he responds and he's like, yeah, I'm interested, because he lived right near me. And then later that day, I sat down to watch, you know, The Battery, and I see his name in the credits. I'm like, whoa. I had heard about this movie, and then I actually got contacted by the sound guy of this movie, and it's like, whoa, this seems like...
That's synchronicity right there.
Synchronicity, right?
Yeah.
So I watched the film, and I'm just like, wow, if these guys can shoot this film for $6,000, it's like, there's no way, there's no excuses, man. There's no excuses. And so I set a cap. I said, I can fiscally, responsibly, you know, burn $5,000 out of my savings. That's what I said to myself. And, you know, it was funny, because we shot so long, over so many months, I ended up never having to do that. I ended up just paying for the film as we went, and I only spent $2,500.
You just gave the cast the cheeseburgers as payment, was it?
Pretty much. Cheeseburger, more pizza. We did some smash burgers sometimes. But to bring it back around, so Nick, the sound guy, he was just playing Cheesecake of Love on the ukulele, and he arranged it on that. He did the arrangement on the ukulele, and then we just all sang it, and it was such a fun recording. I was like, let's just put this in his headphones, and that's him playing. You know, he's playing along to a song.
Right? Oh, fuck yeah, it's fucking great, bro.
Okay, let's go. Ready?
Let's do it. Ready? 1, a 1, a 2, a 1, 2, 3, 4. Cheesecake, cheesecake, cheesecake of love. Cheesecake, cheesecake, cheesecake of love. Ooh, cheesecake of love. It was a cheesecake of love. Doo-doo-da-doo. Cheesecake of love. It was a cheesecake of love.
That he likes, you know, he's performing a concert for a bunch of dead people in the graveyard, you know, and
yeah, that's it. So. Yeah. Well, just to kind of explain, because we're nearly 15 minutes in without even giving the plot synopsis. It's sort of a geekish kind of young fellow and a forbidden love, and that's where his distress sort of lies, without going any deeper into it, because there is a lot of twists and turns.
Yeah, it's a great way to put it, actually. Man, I should hire you to do the marketing. You know, it's funny. They say, you know, I listen to a lot of podcasts about marketing and filmmaking, and they say, you know, one huge thing, it's like, can you say what your movie is in a single sentence? And so, you know, I took that as a very serious exercise, and I just sort of went, okay, Romeo's Distress is the story of a boy named James, his unrequited love for a girl named Jane, and her father Dale's sadistic response to it all. And Romeo, I guess, you know, Romeo's Distress really is like, if you think about the thematically in the movie, is really just like, what would happen, or what kind of movie would it be if Romeo loved Juliet, but Juliet didn't even know Romeo existed, and how horrible it would feel to just not have your Juliet love you back, and the pain you might feel. So there's definitely a lot of that's how that's why I think the title's so apropos.
Yeah, of course. I mean, because everyone, when you say Romeo, they always think of Romeo and Juliet. So that's why when I was watching, I was like, wait a minute, his name isn't Romeo.
Nope.
So it does evoke, tells you like a lot from the title, I suppose, that, all right, what is this lover's distress? Because that's the first thing you think about when you hear Romeo, is some sort of star-crossed lover. But it's quite the opposite. He's getting star-crossed out. He doesn't know what's happening.
Because I mean, he says it in the movies, like, love is a curse, man. He doesn't know. That's the only love he's ever known, is that, like, it's not something. It's not a jubilant experience. It's like, it's an affliction.
Of course.
It's an affliction, so.
And how long was this story kind of gestating? Because watching it myself as a sort of an awkward youth back in the day, I was seeing a lot of myself in the character in some regards. Would this borrow a little bit from your own life?
Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, I definitely have felt some of the feelings that James has felt, obviously, because I wrote this. I mean, really, what does this say about me to write all this? But yeah, man, for sure. And also, it's like what he says in the movie. It's like, you meet somebody who you connect with, or someone who you think will complete you in some way, and it's like there's like this desperation or an urgency, or a need. Maybe a need is the best way to say it, to like want to make that happen. And the thing is, and that's what the whole thing in the flower shop. It's like this: you can't just pluck some pretty flower and put it on your lapel. It's like it's got to be a two-way street, And so I think that's, once again, going back to, like, the horror. This is the horrors of love, and I'm glad we're able to relate with the character. That's what I was hoping. I was hoping that people could relate to James on some level. It's very important for the story that you relate to James on some level, because of all the shifts and stuff. I certainly relate to him.
No, I mean, the character was very relatable, because I think he said a lot about what normally is never discussed, but a lot more visually. There was one bedroom scene in particular that possibly, maybe I'm saying too much for the both of us, but we've probably all been there at some stage under the covers.
Wow, yeah, I just really wanted to create a real sense of dread and discomfort for that. I mean, the goal, that was I just really wanted to create a real turn, like, up to that point, that collage is just so out of focus, and then you're like, wait a minute, whoa, what is this collage? And then you realize that it's not everything is what it seems, and it's like, yeah, it's like taking that a special adolescent time and just turning it into a really creepy and uncomfortable scene. And my biggest fear, and so far it has not happened yet, nobody has compared that to American Pie, because that was my biggest reservation. I was like, I wonder if people are just gonna, like, think this is like the pie fucking in American Pie. And I'm really glad, to this day, I'm the only now, officially right now, I'm the only person to have brought that up. So
no, it definitely didn't cross my mind when I was watching that scene.
Oh, all right.
But having watched the movie overall, there's a real fever dream vibe to the whole thing. Like, it felt very, I wouldn't say I felt on edge, but it was definitely on edge. It was a bit scattery, but in a good way. Was that intended when you're making the movie?
Well, I mean, what you see is actually not a reflection of the true vision of what Romeo was. A lot of that stuff came together in the editing. The story, the original story, is a lot less surreal. there were certain things that were cut out because, again, it's funny. I asked my brother, I said, what do you think of the film? And he's like, well, the first half is really like, it's slow. It's more of a character study. And then the second half is more sadistic revenge. And that's pretty much like, that was not, necessarily done on purpose. And I realized that I really needed to take out, there's so much more stuff that was left cut out because I just really wanted to try and make it make everything flow into each other as best as it possibly could. The third act of the film is way, way different. But we had the exiting of a character, and I had to create a new character that ties in at the end, and then we had to reshoot and add that character at the beginning and in the middle, so that way that character is also sort of playing out throughout the story, because originally he doesn't exist. He didn't exist till like the day before we shot the ending of the movie.
Right,
so,
right.
That's the grave digger character.
Oh yes, yeah.
So, originally he did not exist. It was way different. There's supposed to be this fight with shovels and golf clubs and under a street lamp and all this stuff. But here's the thing, when it comes to like filmmaking and stuff, this is the biggest lesson I've learned about shooting a film, and I feel like this is the way it is on any level. You're presented with choices from time to time because of something called Murphy's Law. Murphy's Law happens.
All about that.
Murphy's Law happens, and then you have a choice. You can either stay adamant, you could stay steadfast to your vision and not get anything, or you can make compromises and change things around and end up with something. And there were many times where I was stuck at this crossroads where it's like, if you don't change your story, or if you don't change your idea, then you're not going to have a movie at all. And I'd rather have something than have nothing. To leave a vision stuck in my head, as opposed to having something to show for all of this hard work of myself and the cast and the crew, just was unacceptable to me. So it's like, you just gotta keep going and going and going. And so again, this guy Adam Ginsberg from Macabre Faire Film Festival said something really awesome at the awards ceremony. He said, a movie's written 3 times. It's written as a script, it's written again during production, and it's written again in the editing room. And that's so true for Romeo.
Yeah, no, it kind of seems that way with a lot of projects. I've been told many a time, even if you're writing a book or something, like the first draft, you might as well throw it out and then start again. So there is a lot of revisions. But was there anything in the production that you sort of regret or you wish ended up in the movie that didn't work out, or some ideas?
I mean, I wish I could have shot my original third act. That is really, more than anything else, that's what I wish I could have walked away with. I think that Romeo would be a drastically different film if I had. And it was funny. We only realized, and I'll tell you afterwards, we only realized the most ingenious way to, the girl Samantha, that with the camera.
Yes.
We realized that there was such a better way for her to exit the movie than the way she does in the film. And it was only after we had picture lock, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Came up with it. I was like, oh my God, that's genius. And it's like, wait, we cannot reshoot that though, because it's just like, everything's disassembled at this point. That set was taken apart, and it was like, to round up everybody again, it just wasn't going to happen. So that was that was a little disheartening, and it led me to this promise. And I said, if I ever get the means or the money, I am going to reshoot the original version of Romeo, the original version, because now I feel, having made told the story, I feel like I could tell it a million times better, and I feel like I could tell it, in a different way than I did. So that's what I would do. But listen, again, I'm very proud of what it is. It's an 82-minute feature-length film, and it's weird and it's offbeat, and you know what? For a debut film, I'm pleased. I'm very pleased.
And I know you're pleased, but how has it been received? Is everyone else pleased watching it?
It's been, it's a mixed bag for sure, man. I will say, I was on, there was another podcast that just like destroyed Romeo, like really destroyed it. And what killed me wasn't so much that they didn't dig the movie or didn't understand it, which is fine. Listen, there's plenty of movies I don't dig. Although I will say, having made a film now, I'm very careful about how I critique other people's work. And,
of course,
yeah. There's tact. There's certain ways to do it. Obviously, what I say in a text message to a close friend is not going to reflect what I say, publicly, or just that, constructive criticism is the key to critiquing something perhaps that didn't connect with me. But these guys were just really, there's honesty and then there's brutal honesty, and it's just sometimes brutality is just not necessary. And so, but what upset me was that some of the facts they were stating were just not even accurate. It was like they weren't even saying, like, they were like, oh yeah, they were basically saying that the plot of Romeo actually ties into a bunch of shorts that I did, which is just not true. So that I didn't appreciate. But I've gotten some great reviews. Dread Central gave us 4 out of 5 stars. We just got into Diabolic magazine, which to me is just like unreal. Horror Fuel gave us 8 out of 10. Called it the result of God, what was the quote? It was like, he said something about like if Edgar Allan Poe tried to write a contemporary romantic comedy or something. I thought that was great. I'm gonna put that on the back of the box or something. Who else? I don't know. We got a bunch of very great reviews. Slaughtered Bird gave us an incredible review. Those guys are awesome. Chris and his team are fantastic bunch of people. And who else? Overall, the reception was positive. But you know what? When you make art in general, not everybody's going to like it. And the 2 things I've learned about the after you make a film process, man, you better be prepared for criticism. And 2, when you get rejected from film festivals, that's when you can see the difference between the boys and the men. Because, every time you get rejected from a film festival, you just are like, I'm a failure. I hate myself. I want to give up. And it's like, if you can work through that and make a second film, then you're the friggin' man. And so that's what I'm working towards right now, trying to make a second film.
And yeah, like, are you throwing it into the festival circuit, or are you just going to focus on your next projects, or how do you plan on further promoting Romeo's Distress besides coming on here today talking with me?
Well, first of all, I just want to say thank you so much for having me on, Richard. And it's wonderful to chat with you. And I really am grateful for your time, attention, and support to Romeo. That's number 1. Number 2, we screened. We had our world premiere at the Macabre Faire Film Festival. It was my first film festival experience. We were nominated in 4 categories. We took home Best Screenplay for a feature-length film. I was nominated for Best Director. Romeo was nominated for Best Feature, and Jeff Solomon, who plays Dale, the father, he was nominated for Best Actor. And just to even be nominated was an honor. I mean, that was like the icing on the cake. So to win one of those, it was like a cake that was balanced on top of another cake as like the cherry on top, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, unreal.
And now we're going to be, let me make sure I plug this correctly. So we're going to be, this guy Ryan Scott Weber and his partner Robert Bruce and this other guy Tony Goggles have put together this really, really cool film festival / horror convention in New Jersey. It's in Edison, New Jersey. And it is called the New Jersey Horror Con and Film Festival. And I guess they have a spring and a fall edition. That's what they're trying to go for. And they have a lot of different movies playing. And they also have a lot of different guests. I'm trying to pull this up right now so I can show you. I should have had it prepared. And Romeo is going to be playing that Sunday with Theta States by Manny. If you're listening, I'm so sorry. I'm about to butcher your last name because I've never heard it said out loud. Serrano, and also people that are gonna be there: John Waters, Frank Henenlotter, Matthew Lillard, Tiffany Shepis, Lloyd Kaufman, Michael Berryman, Patty Mullen, Ted Raimi, the guys from Brian Johnson, who directed Vulgar, that View Askew movie that's really cool. Brian O'Halloran's going to be on there. Scott, the Chuli's gum representative from Clerks, he's going to be over there. So there's going to be so many guests at this thing, and then there's going to be films playing. And we play Sunday night, April 2nd, starting at 6 o'clock for Theta States and 7:45 for Romeo's Distress. And I guess that's our double. We also played the same night at the Macabre Fair Film Festival. And so it's kind of cool that we're playing two festivals back to back like that. And we're just trying to promote the event. We're billing it as like a Sunday double feature, Sunday double creature feature with no creatures in it.
Lovely.
So so that's the next big thing. I'm waiting to hear back up from a couple other festivals, but I'm pretty much at this point, I'm going to put Romeo out myself. I think I've been percolating a distribution strategy. And so I'm going to put it out, and once it's out, I'm going to focus on my next project.
Nice. And can you talk a little bit about your next project? Or is it tip-top secret right now?
I will tell you that it is as dark as Romeo, if not darker, probably darker. It's a very simple story. It's called Hit Run. It's basically about I don't know if I'm going to be able to get it made. It's a little outside of my scope. It's probably going to cost... it could probably cost upward, much more than Romeo did. And the thing is, with this movie, and the one thing I learned about Romeo, it's like, I got to shoot this next film consecutively. It has to be done. I have to shoot it in 7 to 10 days. I'm not going to do this thing where, we shot over 15 months. We shot 23 days over 15 months.
Right.
And it's crazy. And the thing is, Romeo takes place in 3 days.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, it's like a very short time frame.
Yeah, so you're looking at my grandmother, who played the grandmother, James's grandmother was played by my grandmother.
Oh,
and
lovely. That's good.
Well, you cut back to her body, and that's Dave Street, the guy who played Uncle Elmo. We just dressed him up in drag, and those shots are like 18 months apart from each other. It's like insane, like 15 months apart from each other, and it's like that's like, we're very lucky that the continuity, is pretty good for Romeo. I just don't want to do that again. I got to make sure it's right. So this film is called Hit Run, and basically it's just about a dad who gets his first cell phone, smartphone, to be closer to his daughter who's in college, and he gets absorbed into social media, and some very bad things happen, and that's all I'm going to say about it. But it definitely has some really good messages in it. Some really good commentary, I think, about just social media. And I watched my dad get on Facebook for the first time, so a lot of the influence came from how he reconnected with old high school friends. Does like the ice bucket challenge, that sort of stuff. Even though my dad didn't do that, but. And so it's like watching how the older generations are embracing social media, and like some tragic, devastating things that can occur in that sort of area.
Right. Yeah. And just going back to that, it took like over 15 months. I say that was Jeff's distress over that.
Yeah.
Were you afraid that it wasn't going to get made at any point in time?
Oh, yeah. So many times where I either almost said, I'm done, I can't do this. Because, again, there was really nobody but me holding this thing. I mean, at the end of the day, once again, another filmmaking lesson. Nobody is going to give a shit about your film as much as you do, right?
Yeah, of
so
course.
It's like, at the end of it, that's not to say that people didn't give a shit. And boy, people put in their time. And guys like Nick and Anthony and Jeff and just everybody, the whole cast, Cece, and just everybody who showed up, day after day and put in the time. I mean, the movie would not exist without them. But, at the end of the day, no one's going to care about the project as much as you do. And so it's like, to rally everybody, 23 times, with emails and trying to just get everything together. And it's like, trying to get the Michael Fells too. Michael Fells helped out a lot. Shout out to that dude. But just trying to get everything together, going down to locations and filming with my cell phone and narrating to the camera and being like, okay, we're going to turn here and then do this and do that. to try and figure out the camera blocking before we shoot on the day to save time. It just was tough. And when we shot the whole boiler room sequence, that was 12 pages, and we did it in one day. It was a 13-hour day. And it was basically like, if we don't get all this stuff today, now, then the movie is done. And I'm going to walk away from the film. And it was a 50-50 shot, and we went in and we got it. And so it's like, if you're out there and you're hearing this and you're trying to make your own film, and like you are like having a serious like headache, just keep your eye on the prize, and like just know that it's possible. And you repeat these words: never give up. Never ever give up, because that way, if your movie doesn't make it, that it's not because you gave up. That you didn't fail in that way. You just learn from your mistakes.
That seems like some great advice. And how was the support on the home front from your better half? Was she
Oh my God,
go all the way, or was she like, Jesus Christ, stop wasting your savings? This is for your son's tuition.
Well, it's funny. First of all, my wife Inab is just the most wonderful, supportive, incredible spouse that I'm so grateful to have her in my corner.
That's the nice way of saying that she put up with you for 15 months.
Oh yeah. And you want to know something? She was the one who heard me when at my most frustrated, saying, fuck this, I'm done. Can I curse on here?
You can, of course, yeah.
Fuck this, I'm done. And she would always say, no, you can't be done. I don't want to have a miserable husband sitting on the couch because they didn't complete, his passion. So she was the man behind the man, and she's not even a man, like she would hold me up when I could not continue. And the most incredible thing was that, on New Year's Day, January 1st, 2015, about 5 months into production, we found out we were going to be parents. So yeah, it was like, whoa, like two creations on the front. And so the bulk of Romeo was done by the time my son was born. And then after he was born, we had a couple extra days, pickup day or two. And, now he takes up so much of my time. It's like, I'm trying to, figure out how I'm going to do the next movie. It's like I got to readjust, but there are ways anybody can be a filmmaker if they want. They got to find that window of time where they can make themselves available for their art, and they got to, treat it like a job. And you got to, just the way that you show up to your horrible, nightmarish day job, you got to show up to your really fun, awesome, creative job in the same way, even if you're not getting paid, because you're getting paid in satisfaction. You know what I mean?
Amen to that. Yeah.
Right. All right.
This is my little side project to the 9 to 5.
Richard, what do you do personally? Besides the podcast, do you have any like sort of creative outlet stuff that you do?
No, this is kind of mostly it at the minute. Much like yourself, I have the grueling 9 to 5. And,
man.
Yeah.
Just know it.
No, I do kind of reviews and stuff on the side, and I've
right.
recently just taken up to doing the podcast in my spare time, because it takes a lot to produce it behind the scenes, which you wouldn't really realize. But I didn't realize at the time. I said I'd give myself once every 2 weeks, and yeah, fucking hell, if I had to do it once a week like some people do, fair play to them. Like, I don't know how they do it.
But you've been watching a lot of cool films, I bet. I mean,
yeah, I mean, like, what I love about the whole scene, and half the reason I set up the podcast, is I just love seeing people's creations that otherwise would go unwatched, really, and try and get them out to a wider audience. Like, I'm always one to watch someone. If someone messages me, I'll always say, yeah, hand it over. Like, I'll give you my feedback if I can't get a review written up, because it's kind of hard in between everything just to find the time to write. And like, you don't want to dash someone's dreams. I know you mentioned earlier someone ripped apart the movie, but I always have to, like, I scale down kind of my expectations when I know someone has put in a lot of heart and soul pretty much for really small budget, and you just kind of have to take it like that. It's not a multi-million-dollar production, so you have to scale your reviews accordingly, I think. In saying that, I have seen some absolute trash as well, which doesn't deserve anyone's time, but again, you can't be too harsh, because people did dedicate time and effort into these creations, even if like no one intends to make a bad project, is what I like to say. Like
that's a great way to look at it.
It is, and yeah, so I just enjoy talking to people, getting it out there, and that's my creative outlet. Just talking to creators. It's a bit meta.
I think it's great. I think it's honestly great. I'm so glad that that this podcast exists and stuff. And it's cool, man. It's cool to come on and talk about that stuff. And yeah, just to reiterate what you were saying, there's definitely stuff out there. And again, talking about like, lessons as a filmmaker or lessons that I've learned. It's like, it really is true. Like, man, like, and here's the other thing too, it's like if you put something out for public consumption, especially like if you're trying to generate transactions like commercial, like money, if you're trying to rent your film, you have to be prepared for backlash. You have to be it comes with the territory. And so a part of that too is like it's like a process to learn how to not be so sensitive to people not liking your film, because at the end of the day, it's like kids' gloves aren't going to help you. Kids' gloves are only going to make you live in a bubble, right?
Yeah.
Like,
you need to get outside your comfort zone.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's a tightrope, and it's a double-edged sword, and it's like there's definitely like two sides to that, And so just for the record, my weird little imperfect film should not be friggin' immune to criticism. But I am curious to know one thing though, or maybe I'll ask you afterwards, because I don't want to, again, I'm trying to keep the a mystery. You should go out and watch Romeo, because there's a
no such lever. There's
Yeah,
nothing.
what-
It's
yeah,
a really A to B story, and it's really nice.
That's right.
You're giving anticipation spoilers, Jeff. You can't be doing
Let's
that.
cut that out. Let's cut this out. This should be cut this from the record. But yeah.
No, it's good. So, kind of speaking of projects like that, like you see the big multi-million stuff is getting just everything now is under investigation. Like, the Godzilla that just came out, what was it, like 100 million to make or something to that effect, and everyone's like, oh, it wasn't great, story was crap, and this and the next. And you're just like,
Are you talking about the one from Japan, or are you talking about the one with Bryan Cranston?
that was Godzilla, but the King Kong one that just came out, Kong Skull Island.
Yeah, King Kong. Dude, I'm dying to see it. And can we hold on a second? First of all, how do you feel about Peter Jackson's King Kong?
I really liked it. Like the last time I watched it was in the cinema, but that was like 12 years ago, so I enjoyed it at the time. It was good.
I will tell you, I went into that. I'm not a fan of like giant monster movies. I'm not into the giant monsters like, Godzilla, King Kong, Rodin, all that stuff. Not my bag. Never been my bag. I walked into King Kong in 2005 when it came out, and really rolling my eyes, because like, oh, this movie's 3 hours and 7 minutes long. I don't even like, whatever. I walked in and I was transported into the most incredible world. And by the time that movie was finished, that 3 hour running time, you didn't even feel it. You didn't even feel it. And the structure, I mean, it is a very long film, but it has perfect 3-act structure. It could be almost cut up into a mini series. Like, you have On the Way to the Island, you have The Island, and then you have Back in New York. It's like 3 separate chapters. And it just, honestly, it's a masterpiece. It's a friggin' masterpiece. And this new one, it just looks like Apocalypse Now meets King Kong. And I'm sold, especially because I'm such a fan of the Peter Jackson one. So I'm very excited to see what it brings. I haven't seen it yet, but
don't have your expectations that high, is what I say.
Well, you know what? I'll temper them. Again, the goal here is to realize that it's going to be I know it's going to be a lot more of a B movie. It's not going, and not to compare it to Peter Jackson's masterpiece. And if I do those two things, I'll be able to, take it in, the right way. Was it a long film?
I think it was around, I don't know, 2 hours or something.
Oh, all right. I mean, that doesn't seem too bad. You know what I'm really excited for? Have you seen Raw? Or have you heard about Raw?
Raw. I think I've seen it. I don't know. There's too many things out now. Too much TV, too much everything.
This just came out, and you should really watch the trailer. The trailer blew me away because, first of all, it might be one of the scariest trailers I've seen in ever. So there's that. And then on top of the fact that it's a French film, and so they were like, the marketing guys were like, well, what are we going to do? It's like, you don't want to turn people off with subtitles because, I mean, that's a way to lose a whole portion of your audience. Oh, it's a subtitled film. I don't want to see that.
Yeah.
What do? You make the trailer has no dialogue in it. It is just pure, to quote Elric Kane, it is pure cinema. And you just watch it. And basically, Raw is the story of this girl who's been a vegetarian her whole life. And then she tastes meat for the first time while she's in veterinarian school, and suddenly she starts to realize that why her family has always been vegetarian, and it just looks like the coolest, most brutal cannibal film. I love cannibal subgenre is one of my favorites.
Yeah, I'm just looking it up there now, and you've just ruined the twist.
Me? Well, I mean, you know that it's. I mean, you know that from. Well, I don't know. I just feel like
when a young vegetarian undergoes a carnivorous hazing ritual at vet school.
There you go.
An unbidden taste for meat begins to grow in her. Oh, yeah, but it's not saying that it's human flesh. I suppose it's implied. We'll say it was implied, Jeff. God damn.
I'm sorry. You can put me in cinema jail if you like.
No, that's okay. I probably wouldn't have heard about it until you mention it, so it's kind of a blessing and a curse that you just told me about it, but also ruined it.
Well, I will say, in my defense, all I've been seeing on Facebook is new cannibal film Raw. So I think the fact that cannibal's up there in the title makes me feel like it's not, a devastating reveal.
Yeah, I think that's why I said that I'm not on Facebook too much.
Oh yeah, that's right. You did say that before we started.
People ruining it.
It's a great cannibal film too. One really just a perfect film. Parents. Have you ever seen Parents with Randy Quaid?
I have not. No.
Oh man, I won't say another word. Just watch Parents. They, Vestron. They're putting out all those old Vestron titles on Blu-ray, and they're super overpriced. They did Return of the Living Dead 3, Waxwork 1 and 2, but they also did Parents and Blood Diner. And I right now I have the Waxworks and the Return of the Living Dead 3, but I want to get the Parents and revisit it because I have not seen it in a very long time. But it is a incredible film. It's like, it's good stuff.
Oh, excellent. Well, I'd say it's nearly a good time to start wrapping up.
Yeah.
Jeff, do you have any nice closing words or words of wisdom for the fans out there?
Yeah, just support indie horror. Number 1, support indie horror. Number 2, check out New Jersey HorrorCon and Film Festival. And if you are in New Jersey and you're listening to this and you're just like, whoa, I have nothing to do the weekend of April 2nd, come on down and see Romeo for their New Jersey premiere along with Theta States, which is playing before. And number 3, Richard, thank you so much for having me on. This was a lot of fun. And I'm very excited to listen to some more episodes and check out this really cool show that you have, The Fear Merchant.
Well, you're more than welcome for coming on. Jeff, if we were to find you online, where can we find you? Quick shout out. It'll all be in the show notes, but just for anyone who wants to write this down with a pen because they're really old school.
Okay, if you're going to be old school about it, go to facebook.com/Romeo's Distress, the movie, and that's where you're going to find out more stuff about Romeo or just updates.
Great stuff. And you are on Twitter. You are at...
Yeah, I'm not a big Twitter guy. I'm forcing myself to learn Twitter because it's so important for like marketing. I mean, that's how I found you. And
yeah. You better get that plug in.
So I guess my handle there is at J Frumess, JFRUMESS. That's where you can find me on Twitter. But I'm mostly I'm not really tweeting. I'm more like retweeting or tweeting at people. So I'm more
you'll
of a
be
Facebook
retweeting
guy.
this episode when it comes out, no doubt.
Hell yeah, I will be.
Well, great stuff, Jeff. Thank you very much for coming on, and enjoy the rest of your snow day over in White Plains.
Oh, I will. I'm going to be watching horror movies.
Great
Thank you,
stuff.
Richard.
Cheers. And that, ladies and gentlemen, was my chat with Jeff Frumess. He's a really cool dude. Had a good time chatting to him. Truth be told, I am sitting in a hotel room in the middle of Germany, a little bit hungover editing this, and yeah, trying to get it out there for all the loyal listeners. I hope you enjoy it. If I can get it uploaded on this terrible hotel Wi-Fi, but I will try my best. Thank you to everyone who continues to listen to the show, and anyone new along the way, you're more than welcome inside the Bazaar, having all the fun times. And yeah, as always, it's pretty much The Fear Merchant at Instagram is a new one, and Facebook. Check those out. And fearmerchant.com, at gmail.com, all the Fear Merchants. I pretty much have them all. Please don't steal them. If you could very kindly leave a like, comment, review, everything helps for the show, and just tell me that you're listening. I know the stats, I know where you are, so just pipe up and say hello. I'll see you in the next episode for the big episode 10. Can we believe it? 10 whole episodes already. Been great crack so far. Everyone's been an absolute blast and loving it. So yeah, I better head off to bed. It's getting very late for me, and see you soon.
Come back anytime.